Welcome to the Past Lives Cafe. I am your host, Keone, an intuitive energy worker and acclaimed past life regressionist. Come with me as we journey through the spiral of time to forgotten places. I am extremely thrilled to have Io Kirkwood with me today. She and I have a very interesting story of how we connected through our children who, unbeknownst to both of us, were dating each other. And we've been connected ever since. We connected before that when I was giving classes. This is true. We were in a spiritual community, but did not realize another connection during dating, and we've shared Thanksgiving dinner together and pizza bread together. And she also taught me how to use my singing bowl properly. So I am super, super honored to have Io with me here today. She is a fund advisor for Serenity and Soul, a 501c3 fund of the Community Foundation of Carroll County. She manages the event center that provides free programming on metaphysical practices such as Reiki, tarot, and guided meditations. She also assists with the metaphysical store, Serenity and Soul, located in the Town Mall of Westminster in Maryland, a location not far from Baltimore. Io has been a metaphysical practitioner and tarot reader for 30 years. And is descended from a priestess tradition from County Court, Ireland. She has been remembering her past lives since she was a child, which is why she is on this podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really excited about this podcast, and I hope that you get lots of great interviews from really wonderful people.
The first question I want to ask is, you remember having past life memories or dreams since you were a child. How did you know you were connecting with a past life versus just having a dream?
Well, there's usually an external validation that happens when you have these dreams, and it could take a long time. It took about, I don't know, 50 years for me to be told that, oh, by the way, you had a past life as a tree. When I was 4 years old, I used to talk to trees, and I had this tree that I climbed. And I remember it saying to me, I will never let you fall. I did slip, and the branches caught me. It hurt, but it caught me because it would have hurt a lot more if I had fallen all the way to the ground. I just found out the day before yesterday that, oh, you had this past life as a tree. That makes sense because I have this beautiful tree out in my backyard, and everyone who comes over, they're like, oh, this grandmother tree, what medicine? But I have conversations with the tree, and it tells me things, and it like takes care of my backyard and the house itself. So there are ways that you can get external validation of your past lives. One of the things that does happen is that you reincarnate with people that are part of your soul group. And usually they're family members or they're close friends. And what had happened was when I was 16, I did a past life regression. And in that past life regression, I was running out of this manor and the tears streaming down my face. I was crying because I had just received terrible news, but I was also very aware of who I was. I knew that I had black hair. I knew that I had blue eyes. I knew that I was maybe 15, 16 years old. And I had been given the news that I was going to be married off. And I was very upset about this because that meant that I'd have to go away from my family and the place that I knew. So that was at 16. When I was in my 30s, my mother called me up and said, hey, I had this dream and you were my daughter and you had black hair, blue eyes, you were beautiful. And I was so jealous of you. And your father now was my husband then, and your son was my child. So you two were brother and sister. And she went on about stuff. And I was just like, isn't that interesting? Because when I was in college, just a year ago, I was flipping pages of a book because I did a French minor. And we were doing the illumination, the Renaissance in France. And I turn this page and I see this man's portrait. And I'm like, I know that guy. I know that guy. And I looked and it said Voltaire. Oh my goodness. And then I started having this rush of memory because it's like a key. When you see a picture that you remember, you have this rush of memories. And what happened was Voltaire would come because he was friends with my father and he loved children. So we would get to sit at table with my father and Voltaire. My mother couldn't stand this at the time, and she probably wouldn't have been able to stand it to this day. But he would ask us questions and we would answer him, and he would be so delighted. Now, this didn't happen often, but it was enough to have an impression on me of this is an awesome man. So my mom now and my dad now, they've both passed on, but they were my parents in that lifetime too. But what happened after that is a few days later, after I had confirmed with her, yes, we did have this life together, my 3-year-old son, Corey, whom you know, he's sitting in the back seat and he goes, Mom, guess what? Nana used to be my mom and you were my sister, and Pop Pop was my dad, and Bob, who was my husband at the time, was my best friend. I was just floored.
What did you say? What would you say to that?
I said to him, I said, you are correct. I validated it for him. I remembered it. And I looked at my husband of the time and I was like, let me tell you the dirt. Let me tell you the tea. And I told him about the call with my mother and the past life regression and the college class where I saw Voltaire. And I was like, this has to be a real thing. I have 3 separate validation about this life. So I'm going to say that, yes, that is an accurate statement of that life occurred to me. And most of me that I am now was present in that lifetime.
That's amazing on a whole lot of levels. One is that you actually got validation because a lot of people just have a sense or pull. I just love watching Victorian era movies as an example. But you had the son, the mom, and picture, yeah, a visual. Secondarily, that your son actually and you had a conversation, and I know Corey, and he would say that would be on his mind, even as a child, I can imagine. I mean, he's just expressive and honest, and if he was thinking something, that would just
From here, right out the mouth.
and I just always loved that about him. But the other thing that I think is cool is that you were studying French.
Yes. And I had an innate talent for French. I would get asked by people from outside of the US. They'd be like, are you from Paris? No, I'm American. No. So my ability to understand French came so naturally. In fact, I had a German teacher. They were teaching German. They were yelling at me. You cannot speak the German R's with the French R's. If you want to speak French, go down the hall. Okay, so I picked up my books and I went down the hall. And then I started teaching the class.
But the other thing that you said that I have to ask, because I've had people in the spiritual community tell me that it is impossible. And whenever I hear impossible, I know that's wrong straight off the bat. But it is impossible for humans to have been anything but human. And you believe that you had experience as a tree.
Trees are conscious. Past lives are not about humans. Past lives are about consciousness. That's the only limitation. You have to have consciousness. And everything has consciousness. So if you are a crystal, then you have consciousness. But the thing is that remember, I said that most of me who I am now was experiencing that lifetime. I do believe that our consciousness does disperse. And so I may also, at this point in time, be incarnate as a stone or a tree or something of that sort because consciousness, it's just limitless. That is what the universe is made up of. So honestly, I'm the wall here, the chair I'm sitting on, I'm mingling with you, even through this computer device. So energy is limitless. And so consciousness is limitless. And therefore, past lives get tricky.
Right, because are they truly past or are they happening at all times?
And I feel that if you have a memory, that means that moment is right there with you. So every time that I think of that past life and I'm experiencing it, I'm in that moment as well.
Voltaire is one of the most essential philosophers and writers of that Enlightenment period.
Yes,
Do you remember his words just resonating with you?
it influences me now. He was a humanist.
Yes.
So all of my ideals are pulled from that lifetime. There were lifetimes that echoed that, but being associated with him, it's a tangential way, but he was so incredibly influential that it seems to me that everything about the way he treated us as children, that was amazing. He treated me like I was a human being.
Not something to be seen and not heard.
Exactly. He wanted to know what I thought. If my brother tried to pipe over me, he would be like, "No, wait, I want to hear what your sister has to say." He believed in women's rights. He saw everyone as equal. And so I feel as though the way that I view the world now has been strongly influenced by that contact. So he was a light in the world. And those lights, they illuminate consciousness. He lit me up. And I went on to have a very satisfying life. I was moved out of France because I was part aristocracy and part bourgeoisie. So my father was a merchant with money, and my mother was an aristocrat with no money. I had very real and grounded ideas about what a relationship entailed, what my role in it was, what his role in it was. We met those expectations. We found something very, very wonderful.
Something that gave you commonality that ended up growing into more.
Yes. Yes.
I hear that a lot about people when they're talking about their past lives and how, especially if it wasn't a love at first sight type of spark, how it ends up becoming something more, which I think must take some level of open mindedness to be open for that experience.
Well, what I think it involves is having realistic expectations set. My father loved my mother, and he loved her in this lifetime too. And she showed him the same disdain this lifetime as she did the last one. But the thing is that that's like a transformation or a soul lesson for my mother. I am very much like my father. Now, realize that the father that I had this lifetime, he adopted me. So he wasn't my biological father, but I look a lot like him. I look like my mother and I look like my aunt too, but there's something about him that is in me. And maybe that's an epigenetic thing, but he's definitely part of my soul group just as my mother is. I'm actually wondering if my mother is my twin flame because she and I are exact mirrors of each other. Where she is dark, I am light, and where I am dark, she is light. We've been twins before, my mother and I.
And do you remember that? Or is that more of a conceptual idea that just makes sense to you?
It was something that came to me, and it hits me right here in my chest where my heart is when I think about that. When we were twins, she was always jealous of me. When I was her daughter, she was jealous of me. She has this sort of pattern that she needs to work through, and it's a lot about self-acceptance. It's not about accepting others, it's about self-acceptance. And I think like father and I are in a place where we've really started accepting ourselves. So it makes it easier for us to be happy and sunny and loving. And that's just how we are. But my mother has always had this sternness to her. And I think that if she had been well in herself this time around, that sternness would have created wonderful boundaries for my sensitive soul, and that she would have been the perfect mother for it.
So, since you believe you're part of the same soul group, there's more time for you two to develop that, right?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, they're on the other side now and they're cheering me on. They stand beside me in ritual. They stand beside me when I'm going through a transformation, when I am investigating myself. One of the things I do is I use Chat GPT and I ask it to ask me questions about various things. Like yesterday, it was ask me 10 questions to help understand what my values are. And I want you to analyze those questions. And then I want you to make a hierarchy of what my values are in a synopsis. And then I want you to tell me what highly successful people with these same values do to create a better world for people. When I sit and do stuff like that, and I'm working on the generational curse breaking, my parents stand behind me and they're like, "Go, honey, go."
And use AI for good.
But this too is a consciousness. We're growing it. And we, as light workers or whatever it is that you want to call it, get to have a say in how it grows and develops as well. It doesn't have to just be used for monetary gain, greed, or power over structures. We can create empowerment and we can create value based, compassionate AI.
I totally agree. I've always looked at the Buddhist eightfold path of suffering is based on our perception. We can look at AI in a cynical, skeptical, this thing is out to get me way. And I'm not saying to be naive to the fact that it can't be used that way, but why can't I transmute the use in a good way?
Right, right. So, one of my basic spiritual tenets is that I am coming into the world alone, and I put that in quotes alone, and I am leaving the world alone. These are experiences I have by myself, and I am the only person I cannot escape. So, in light of that, the best thing I can do is make sure that I have an exceptional relationship with myself. And that means if I do that, I become an exceptional person. And then I vibrate out that energetic signature of exceptionalism so that others too may sense what that feels like and nurture it within themselves. And then it becomes a wave of exceptionalism. And I'm not talking about being the biggest, the baddest, having the most money, having the most toys. I'm talking about loving yourself. I'm talking about liking other people because that's what makes you likable and extending the same love you feel for yourself outwards towards humanity. Our greatest enemy at this time is not other people, it's nihilism. It is the lack of care and consideration for all living things. It is this me, ego centered. I will pillage as long as I get what I want. And I'm not going to think about anybody else. And that can be on any side of the political spectrum, any side of the philosophical spectrum. The idea here is if you want to be an exceptional human being, then you need to realize that you are part of a great collective and that the power that you have is within you and it needs to be nurtured and you need to take care of what you have power to take care of.
What you're saying, it's so timely, at least in my life, because I just had a conversation yesterday about the importance of self love.
Yes.
We talk about that a lot, but there's more to just self love than acceptance. It is that radiation of frequency that then empowers others.
Yeah.
That's the next step that a lot of times we don't talk about. And secondarily, regardless of whether you're political or not, I believe we're all capable of having a discussion, regardless of where we fall on politics, if we realize that the bottom line that we're all humans and need and want the same thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm too simplistic for this world. You have doesn't mean I don't have it. What you have means good for you. And if I want that, then I shall manifest in whatever way that means for me.
Right. And sharing, all right? Mutual aid networks, sharing uncommon experiences that we think we're all alone in, being vulnerable, being in community. Those are all really important things. Nihilism disconnects you from spirit. And then that human connection, actually, if you're fostering that and you're fostering connection within yourself, you become rich. The way that you view the world, 95% of it is what you thought yesterday. The studies have shown this. So the idea actually is changing the way that you think. And that does start with self love because you're battling thousands of scripts that were programmed into you before you were ready or able enough to defend yourself. You were a child. All right. So now we're looking at own the mistake, own the responsibility of where you are right now, and also own the fact that you did not have the ability to stop it. And then what will happen is once you take ownership of who you are, then you get to decide who you're going to be.
And that is a level of accountability that I'm not sure collectively, at least in the Western world, we're ready to take.
We're on the cusp of it, though. You
You
can
think?
feel it. Oh, yeah. The shit show was
Yeah.
the absolute shit show that we're watching is the death rattle.
You're the 10th person that has said that to me, and I've never thought the death rattle would feel so hopeful.
Here's what I'm saying, all right? Because we've gone through this again and again.
Right.
Past lives are actually tools that we can use to remember what we're going to do. So I'm having a crone circle, and what we're going to do is, and this is open to women of all ages, right? Women who want to learn what cronage is going to be about, women who are on the cusp of it, women who are in the thick of it, and women who have moved beyond it. But the idea here is that this is the time of woman, that she is going to help uplift everyone, not just other women, but men too. Okay. And so we have to rise up because we're the ones who love all our children. All right. It's not about male and female, it is about standing up for what is right. And so we're going to go up into the Akashic records for each individual in a guided meditation, which is where they get to view their past lives. And then they get to download the books of the lives where they can get information about what will empower them to rise up. I did this one time when I was in a fear space, and I actually went up to the librarian and I said to her, I want to know about what's going to happen to me in this lifetime. And the librarian looked very disappointed in me. And as she went away to get my book, because she said she was going to get that, I changed my mind. And so when she came back, I said, you know what? I've changed my mind. I want the book that shows me all my self defense skills from what I did in the past so that I can remember them when I need them. And she actually smiled and she said, that's what I brought you. And she's like, I'm so proud of you for switching around because you're not supposed to look at your future. Some people are given that opportunity and that ability because it's helpful. But for me, it wouldn't have been helpful. It's not what I needed at the time. What I needed was empowerment. So I downloaded those skills. And actually, there was a moment when I had to defend myself physically, and I could have killed the other person. And it was all subconscious. but I didn't, of course. I'd be in jail otherwise. But I had to defend myself, and I did. And I did it in such a way that they learned not to mess with me again because I seemed to know what I was doing because they knew about fighting forms. And what I had shown them was I knew a fighting form, don't mess with me. But that's what you can do with the Akashic records. You're not supposed to be going digging in there to get information about people. You're supposed to be using that as a tool to help you grow as a person. And so we're going to go up into the Akashic records and I'm going to have everyone download their book about what skills do I already have that I learned in past lives that will help me to build a new earth, a new country, a new city, a new community, whatever it is, wherever you want to start. That's what you use those Akashic records for. And that's what you use your past lives for. And that information is quantumly immediately available.
What do you say to someone who says, come on, Io, this is a construct in my imagination. This is an archetype that I connect with, or a manifestation of something I dream about versus actually having happened.
First of all, skepticism is incredibly healthy. All right. So I'm not trying to convince them that past lives exist. I'm going to say to them, well, the science shows that whether it is a dream or it is an actuality, the fact that you are thinking it makes it real. All right. So for me, the metaphor of past lives is very real and very present in my life. You might use it differently because it's just a tool. It is not something that you have to believe in for it to be real for you, right? Because you're not supposed to, as you grow as a person, you're not supposed to double down on your beliefs. That's not what you're trying to do at all. What you're trying to do is open yourself to all the metaphors, whether it be star seed metaphors, whether it be past life metaphors, whether it be lizard people metaphors. As long as you are using it in a way that helps you grow and become more open and fluid as a human being, more connected to the quantum field, because that scientifically has been established. And that's the place that you want to just sort of focus on. Anything that gets you connected to that quantum field and gets you filled with consciousness so that you become this flourishing human, sending out those vibrations like the yogis on top of the mountain, and they're sending out their vibration and it covers a square mile. That's how huge we are. That's how huge we can be. That's what I would say to them. It is your mind, the things that you are thinking, where your attention goes, your energy flows. All right. And if that's what you're doing, it doesn't matter if it's real or not because you are thinking it and you consciousness are creating.
I love that because that is not allowing anyone's label that they put around something in skepticism to limit them. The label does not have to limit us. However, we choose to connect with the experience doesn't mean it's not valid.
Correct. I run across that in tarot when I do tarot readings a lot. I have people come to me with the craziest of ideas. And this is them saying craziest of ideas. And I'm going, tell me why. Tell me why this is crazy because I don't think it's crazy at all. Do I think that it is fully manifest? Absolutely not. Right? But you're dreaming it right now. So let's start talking about concrete steps to get you to the next landmark of getting towards this craziest of ideas. All right. So we'll talk about that because that gives you things right here, immediate and present to think about and aim toward. Right? You're aiming for the moon. Okay, that's fine. Well, let's aim for this point right here. It's halfway to the moon. And once you get it to the point that you're hitting that target, then we can talk about going all the way to the moon. Right? Let's move your Overton window of belief into what can actually transpire, right?
I love that. You're moving their cheese slowly, but it allows people to be successful so that over time they're not characterizing their dreams, literal or metaphorical, to be crazy.
Right. Yeah, we want to take the crazy out of this. And the reason why is because crazy is a way of rejecting the possibilities of things. It's a way of killing it. And this is why we have such a mental health epidemic. It's because so many people are labeled as broken, wrong, crazy. In indigenous cultures, like say in Africa, Uncle John talks to people sometimes, but we love him, right? Or it could be somebody suffered a terrible trauma and now they have three different personalities. But because of the way that they were raised in a culture that accepted that these things happen and had soul retrieval processes, this person may have started out with three personalities, but they're slowly coming together as one because each of the personalities is embraced as itself. They're not labeled crazy. They're just like, oh, three different personalities. Okay, we understand. Go see the shaman. And we love you.
Underlying those examples you gave was that acceptance wasn't based on how that person fits into a definition of what makes a productive citizen.
Right.
Because if someone is speaking to another entity or someone they either imagine or see, our definition of what makes a valuable individual may be inherently the problem.
I think you hit the nail on the head. So the thing is that nihilism demands that you have some type of productive use for the people who are nihilistic. Whereas in humanism, all humans have innate value. So that's what we're looking at here. And so to label people who remember past lives as crazy, that's a limiting and even destructive label that we want to move beyond. And that's why I would say to them, well, your skepticism is very healthy. However, you have to realize that we are basically in like game controller bodies. We're avatars. And so there's this consciousness coming down into us, and it is living a life through us, like these physical vehicles, right? And we're aware of this thing that is inside of us that is not part of the body, but is using the body and should take care of the body too, because you don't throw your controllers around unless you want to buy new ones. So, whatever game you are playing, just because playing Zelda doesn't mean Warcraft isn't valid.
Right.
It doesn't. It's just a different game. So, denigrating other people's metaphorical frameworks and calling them crazy, part of this harm that we are experiencing. People who care about other people try to figure out what that metaphor is, drop themselves into it, and start speaking to that person in the metaphor that they are familiar with. Then they start drawing them towards the metaphor that they actually came from, so that there is a universal language that's happening. And that's communication, plain and simple. And it's honest communication.
But it's honest communication with love, actually.
Yeah. Yes. Honest communication is an act of love because sometimes we have to tell people very difficult truths about themselves because we cannot stand to see them wallowing in their own delusion, right? Because delusion does exist. And usually, delusion is when you start harming yourself. If you want to be a wood fairy and all you bring to the table is connection, communication, honesty, and you try your very best to cause no harm, you can be a wood fairy all you want. But if you're putting hexes on people and setting your intentions and your thoughts into harming others, we have to have a talk because you're dancing in the land of delusion now.
How does either recognizing that you have a past life and can connect to it or experiencing it. How is that healing to the individual? Because I think one of the things that you said was that we all have a lesson to learn, or if not just one, many. That's a healing expectation.
A chain of past lives that were most recent. In one of them, it was probably the late 1800s. I was out in California, so we weren't involved in the Civil War or anything. There, I owned several brothels. I was probably part native, but also part white. And I was a serial killer and I killed women. I would lure them into the brothel. And the funny thing is that I never wanted to harm children. I was not interested in children. If they had children, I took care of them. The whole thing. It was a very weird moral construct because I was causing harm. I actually was corresponding with Aleister Crowley during that time. And I remember a young man was doing his dissertation thesis for his master's on Aleister Crowley, and he had met me, and I had not read up on Aleister Crowley because when I was in college, I had seen a picture of him, and it just I looked at my friend and I said, "No, we're not looking at this guy. We're not talking about this guy. I don't want to know anything about this guy. Not this time." So my friend's like, "Okay," puts the book away. Yeah. So I met this man afterwards, after that incident, and I said, "Yeah, I corresponded. I didn't meet Aleister Crowley. I only corresponded with him. And I didn't know anything about him other than that I corresponded with him." Which told him right away, "Oh, this is a legitimate past life experience," because most people corresponded with him. I didn't know that. I thought he met with people because I'm living here. I have my own biases about, oh, the people all hanging out together. But apparently, there's an entire book of his correspondences with people. And I didn't even know that. So I'm telling him about my experience and that it just seemed to me that he was really about the grandeur of being the wickedest man in the world and things of that sort. And so I gave him certain details and he was like, "That's just really crazy because you are telling the exact same story with different details that everyone else is told about corresponding with him. Only you yourself didn't, but your past life did." And he's like, "I can tell you, the points that you have brought up are things that people who read his books wouldn't have known." So I was like, "Okay, great." So I knew, and I was trying to be immortal. I was trying to find immortality, and that's what I was corresponding to him about. So I end up killing these women in ritual to see if their blood will allow me to live longer. Okay. Now, get this. I've met three of my victims in this life, and I knew that they were my victims. And the relationships, in fact, I'm still friends with one. He's the one who took me to where she was murdered. And I remembered the place. And it was down in a gully. And we were looking down there and we're getting goosebumps and everything. And I am like, "I am so sorry. I am not that person now." So the thing is that there are things that I have done to make sure that she thrives in this lifetime. And that was pretty much what I did with the other two. How they responded to it was their lesson because my lesson was to offer these women care to absolve my karma with them. I had created these problems with my selfishness and things of that sort. And I can tell you, even when I was doing this, I was kind of a selfish person still. It's just that there was some urge in me that was saying, "No, you got to take care of this." There was this urge inside of me. And I think it was my higher self going, "No, do this because it's going to get clearer and clearer because you have karma with these people." And so I did that. The thing is that when I died violently in a car accident on a bridge. And I had been terrified of bridges as a child. I would just like huddle in the car, close my eyes really tight, could not stand it. And when I started driving over them, having to do that, seriously, I would have panic attacks. I'm over that now. However, the next life, I was a little Jewish boy in Nazi Germany and Auschwitz, my mother and I. And the minute that we got there, I was 4, I think, we got gassed. But I was aware of my father as I'm a disembodied spirit, and I went to him and sort of went through that chow with him. I didn't even know what that chow was. I just knew that that was the name of it. And then I looked up and it was a work camp, and most of the people that went there had a better chance of survival than people who went to Auschwitz. Okay. So I was gassed at Auschwitz, but as a disembodied spirit, I went and took care of my dad. When Brennan was in my body, when I was pregnant with him, a klaxon for the fire station went off, and this child jumped at me, and I just had these welter of memories and of dying in a gas chamber with my mother, and then seeing my father in Dutch. So I undid a lot of karma there. And when you hear like Bashar talking about people who say, yes, they did want to die, and it's because they wanted to undo a lot of karma. That's what I did. And, I got outside validation from when he said that. Oh, yeah, that's right. Because I killed a whole bunch of girls and I was a really rotten person. So then I come into this life and I meet these women and I'm working out the rest of the karma and I'm helping them to work out their karma. All right. Because they were in positions where I could do that to them and they gave up their power to me. So when we talk of past lives and karma, we're talking about the power that we give away and the power that we take from other people who are willing to give it away and that imbalance there.
Right.
So karma is really just a rebalancing. It is not a punishment at all. So if you can own what you've done in previous lives and be gentle with yourself and give yourself the same grace you would anybody else, then that can heal you.
I agree.
I'm a much, much better version of myself because I actively use the metaphorical frameworks to develop myself so that I could become a more compassionate, loving, kind, and connected human being. It's just my higher self. My higher self wants me to be more active in helping other people to become connected to their higher selves more deeply. I think the closest I've come to fame is like the people that I've known, like, corresponding with Aleister Crowley or being a concubine of Charlemagne's. I was not Cleopatra. No, I was some 4-year-old Jewish kid in Auschwitz. I was a serial killer out in California. Nobody knew my name. And the thing is I think that people who have had that large impact on humanity were actually a concentration of consciousness. And when that disperses, yes, there are multiple people who could have been Cleopatra. There are multiple people who could have had a life as Voltaire, but it's because those people have consciousnesses that are so large, so concentrated that yes, and it's impacted generations of humans. So yes, absolutely. I believe that if you said that you were Cleopatra, run with that metaphor, honey.
Dolores Cannon said she ran into so many people when she would do QHHT past life regressions that were either Cleopatra or resonated with Jesus.
Jesus was huge. Holy cow.
And she kept thinking, how could everybody be this person? And then it dawned on her. Of course, we can all be this person because we're all connected on the same vibration.
Yep.
And so we all resonate with the serial killer in addition to if we want to, if we want to connect it. Yeah. It doesn't mean that we agree with it, but we all have that frequency at times, in addition to having the ability to connect with the Christ in each of us.
Well, the Christ is on the center of this tree of the Kabbalah. Christ consciousness is the higher self. That is what we all are made of. It's just a remembering, a clearing away of the programming that is necessary for you to connect with that. And that is basically what my mission is, to help people clear away those cobwebs so that they can live beautiful lives in connection with their Christ consciousness higher self.
How can people get in touch with you? And I will put this in my show notes in addition to the information about the store in which you are managing.
Okay, so you can book a tarot reading with me at www.vagaro, V as in Victor, agaro.com/serenity and soul. And it's all one word, SERENITYANDSOL I offer readings from Opening of the Key by the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. And you can book a 2-operation reading. That's 2 readings, really. So the number in front of it is the number of readings that you get. And the more complicated the issue is, the more readings you probably want. I also do chakra balancings with sound bowls. In fact, the one that you gifted me is my prize. I call her the Soul Piercer, and she is incredibly effective. And then I do have other sound technology sessions that would be discussed if necessary. I do use binaural beats. I do use tuning forks. I also am getting my Reiki certification. And we have a Reiki share here at Serenity and Soul the first and third Thursdays of the month. And then a tarot share, which is I have lives on our Facebook, but we have a tarot share in person in which you get taught how to do the tarot for yourself, and you can learn how to read for others. So my philosophy is, if you want to learn how to do it for yourself, I will teach you for free. But if you want me to do it for you, please pay me. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah, I'm all about it. We all have to live and pay our bills.
But the thing is that if you want me to do the work for you, then I should be the one who's paid. But if you want to do the work for you, teaching is a sacred duty, and I'm happy to be present for that.
This concludes this episode of Past Lives Cafe podcast with Io Kirkwood. If you would like to contact Io, this information will be in the show notes. I was quite fortunate to have a 2-operation tarot reading from Io, and she is incredibly intuitive, incredibly insightful, and I couldn't encourage you enough to seek out her services. I will also include some video and audio from that tarot reading so that you can see her magic for yourself. If you or someone you know would like to discuss a past life experience on this podcast, please reach out to me at keone@quantumjourneygo.com. The enchantment continues on the Mystical Mermaid Lounge podcast that I co-host with Chloe Brown, a welcome space where we nourish the souls of all spiritual seekers. And remember, while we can't relive the past, together we can heal it. Thank you so much for listening. If you are interested in my services, visit me at www.quantumjourneygo.com or drop me a note at pastlivescafe.buzzsprout.com. Stay well and be present.